nearly 3 decades, Wade's Guitar Shop has been a staple of Milwaukee's East Side, located right off UWM's campus on Oakland Avenue.
I was about 19 when I started working at a little guitar shop up in Wausau called the Music Tree, and I basically started learning to play and repair guitars at the exact same time. I moved out to San Francisco, kind of an attempt to get away from Wisconsin, see what else was out in the world, and I worked in a vintage guitar shop out there called Jacob & Son Fine Guitars, and kind of really got into the whole vintage market. Moved back here in '89 and opened up my shop, so we'll be 25 years old this June. We pack about 250 guitars into about 1,000 square feet in the shop here, as well as 4 repair benches.
The Guitar Shop is a mix of classic ideas filled with vintage gear, but also has a very modern feel.
I took old school ideas, so I really wanted to, sort of base my shop on how I knew stores to be, in New York from the 60s and the shops that I experienced in San Francisco in the late 80s. I wanted a store where professionals would come in and meet, where you would get information and not high-pressured sales.
Wade's has also evolved with the digital age and kept up with the times.
We've always had an attraction to vintage guitars. It's very tough these days to strictly be a vintage store. There's a lot of people, in the country who are still doing that. What I saw with the evolution of online sales like eBay, Craigslist, and just people being able to gather information about their vintage guitars is it's very tough to buy vintage guitars at wholesale.
There's not a single instrument in the shop any guitarist wouldn't want to call his own.
The vintage market has dried up quite a bit, and what we have done is filled all those spaces with just high quality guitars, whether they be quality new guitars, quality used guitars, like something more recent from the last 10 or 15 years, of which, that seems to be more what people can afford anyway. I have experience in repairing everything. So in the 30 years that I've been doing this, I work on acoustics, electrics, wiring modification. We do a lot of aftermarket pickup installation here, complete rewiring of guitars.
Most guitar shops have a Luth ear on hand, but we'll get into that a little more later on. For now, it seems the term has lost some of its true meaning in recent years.
The tradition of being a luthier is somebody who builds guitars, and that would go way back to when it was building acoustic instruments. And I think very often, that word luthier kind of gets thrown around, and I think most people understand that these days I think it's looked at as a fuzzily defined word that could be anything from a very good guitar repairman to a guitar builder.
What you will find upon walking through the doors is the true essence of a guitar shop. You can actually play the instruments on display.
So there's no signs that say please do not touch. All of our stuff here is meant to be played. We try to keep everything clean and in tune and well set up. We are a repair shop, so people just come in, take guitars down, and that's how you know what you're going to like.
I feel like Wade's has really both ends of the spectrum, both extremes. For the beginners, because it's a college town, there's a lot of students that are just, experimenting with the idea of music.
With 4 or 5 questions, I can very often help somebody really weed out all the gear out there that they don't want or they don't need. What is your budget? What style of music do you like or want to play? Who are your favorite guitarists? What is your body size or type? Somebody very short or a kid may prefer a smaller body guitar. Somebody who's a little older, maybe with weak shoulders or a weak back, might want a guitar that's very lightweight. But ultimately, within a handful of questions, you can weed out what they don't need, and I think the idea is always to try and find the right instrument for the person. For over 20 years, I've had Alvarez and Rickenbacker guitars in the shop. A lot of people know from the Beatles playing, Tom Petty, Roger McGuinn of the Byrds, very distinctive, very low production numbers, classic American guitar.
One might say they have an embarrassment of riches of fine quality Martin guitars.
It was the dream fulfilled to finally have the Martin line, because that was the acoustic line that I always wanted, but was very difficult to get. Martin doesn't just make anybody a dealer, so that was something that I worked on probably for the first 6 years of my business, was trying to get my foot in the door with them.
There is quite a large amount of interesting products for the seasoned veteran. There's a lot of more high-end guitars that you wouldn't find. And
the shop keeps a solid foundation within the community by donating to auctions, charities, and also fundraisers.
Usually what we do is donate instruments to silent auctions. So if you look at all of the different schools and organizations on the east side. I would say that over the last 20 years we have regularly donated to all of them. It supports their theater groups, it supports their schools, it supports their renovations of their spaces, and we primarily keep those donations to things that are within our very nearby community. My dad always told me that it's better to have a small business packed with a lot of gear than to have a giant business with hardly any inventory in it. We call this around here cozy.
Wade's has also started up a podcast series, which can be found in the iTunes store or simply by checking it out on their website at wadesguitarshop.com.
We started doing about 5 years ago, and we did 20 or so episodes. We were doing them about every 4 weeks. It takes an entire Friday night to shoot one of the podcasts, which is called the Guitar Shop Podcast. The idea was to sit here and talk about the kind of things we talk about in the shop all the time. People asking questions about repairs, tips on modding, asking us questions about the best type of products to buy. So basically we kind of review, we give repair tips, and we just talk about all the stuff related to what we call GAS, Gear Acquisition Syndrome.
The original location of Wade's shop was across the street on Oakland nearly 25 years ago. Upon signing the lease, a local walked in and had little idea that it would turn into a lifetime friendship.
And after I signed the lease, I went in and I nailed up some pegboard and I started to paint it. And this guy walked in and he goes, "Hey, I live across the street and I saw you doing some painting in here. What kind of shop are you opening up?" And I said, "That's going to be a little guitar shop, repairs and sales." And he said, "Wow, I play guitar, and if you need any help, I would love to help." I handed him a paintbrush and I said, "Let's go." And that is my teacher, Anthony, who started working for me that day. Started with a paintbrush. He very quickly started working part-time and teaching part-time. While he was working for me, he went to the Conservatory of Music for fingerstyle and jazz, and just all of a sudden took his theory through the roof. And he has been my one and only teacher and friend for 25 years. So it's a great story, and he's an amazing teacher. The advice that I give is just a general piece of advice, and this is advice that would be ingrained in me from when I was a kid, from my parents. And that is, do something that you love. And if you really enjoy what you're doing, it makes your job a lot easier, and people can sense that. Your customers will sense that you love what you're doing, and they will come to you. If you do what you love, you're doomed to succeed.
Advice spoken from a professional who truly loves what he does.
Giving somebody a really positive experience when they're in your shop is the kind of thing that creates the word of mouth that goes out there and makes you who you are.
For more information, you can call them at 414-961-0848. You can also locate them at their website at www.wadesguitarshop.com. Our next stop takes us to a store in Milwaukee's trendy 3rd Ward called Beyond 11. They specialize in unique and custom instruments.
We've been here for about 5 months. We used to be located on 13th and Rawson.
It seems the new location has created a stronger following and a bigger fan base.
It was very far south, and we're seem to be getting more business here. We specialize in good guitars at a low cost. We have a lot of acoustics, acoustic electrics.
Tommy Blood, the store luthier, has worked at both locations and is well-knowledged in just about any problem you might have on your guitar.
My specialty is breaks, cracks, and setups.
Don't be intimidated to walk through the doors and ask for help. The store caters to beginners and to the more advanced players.
I provide lessons to people of all ages. I do beginners to professionals. My specialty is getting guitarists over walls they may encounter, which I have encountered many and been able to pull through, and I try to help people get over them.
Don't give up. When I first started playing guitar, I got frustrated with it and didn't know where to go, and I gave up and I stopped playing for a year. Any person who picks up any instrument will tell you that there is that hump. Once you develop a passion for it and really enjoy the instrument and what you're doing with it, it's something that's irreplaceable in your life.
Outside of work, Tommy pays tribute to his guitar idols by rocking out every weekend.
I have a band now called Tommy Blood and the Blues Hounds. It's a kind of a guitar heroes thing, and I pay tribute to all my makers, I guess you would say.
Tommy has seen a lot of guitars and worked on many, but remembers a certain special item in particular.
I built the whole thing for him. He got all the parts for me, and so it was a silver, chrome guitar. He got all gold hardware, and that was really neat, and it turned out great. They sound really good too. I remember a 62 Melody Maker. That is a rare guitar, and finished that one up. It was very intensive.
Another great item on display is the cigar box guitar. The name is derived from the cigar box body it's made from. It is highly unusual and incredibly rare.
They're really interesting. Looks like they used hinges for the tail stop there, screws for the bridge, and a pickup in, I think, both of them. But the same person that made those made the tables. And there's all sorts of neat tables in here, and they're for sale.
Beyond 11 has a different take on the walk-in and rock-out mentality. They prefer you respect the store's equipment and politely ask first before hitting that first power chord.
Just the obvious ask before you touch, please don't go, walking around like where you're not supposed to, like in the back of, where we got all these pickups and stuff. If you just ask me before you take it down, I'll usually come and take it down for you, a guitar.
I mean, some music stores need to have kind of an understanding for that. I feel like some of the more mainstream music stores with a lot more foot traffic kind of have a lesser expectation for the people that come in there to not just walk in and want to pick up every instrument they see.
We get a lot of questions on what can I do? My guitar sounds screechy, what can you do?
Many questions revolve around specific parts and tools, which they carry an extensive selection of.
They're all different, but we get a lot of questions about parts and stuff like that.
The store carries some common brands, but also sells other less popular names as well.
Gibson, Dean, Washburn, and Luna.
Few other stores carry the selection of pickups that Beyond 11 does.
All kinds of pickups, mostly Seymour Duncan.
Like any great salesman, Tommy will tell you that they have the best prices in town.
All the guitars are priced way low, probably the lowest prices in town. We are totally for beginning guitar players, and we try to give them deals.
The shop also partners with charities and organizations. They raise money by kindly donating instruments and other memorabilia.
For instance, if somebody has cancer and is trying to pay for treatment, we'll help with a couple of guitars, t-shirts, and stuff like that. Try to help with the fundraising efforts.
This is about as modern as a store will get. They try to stay ahead of the curve by getting their hands on the latest gear available.
We always are striving to improve as far as getting new equipment in, keeping up with the new things that are coming out, keeping up with parts. All the guitar players love toys, and we try to keep up on the toys. So.
I understand the necessity for those stores because I was an amateur at one time and wanted to go in there and find out the ropes and whatnot and see what I could buy.
Problems can get worse, and if you need something fixed, I'm the luthier here, and I'd be glad to take a look at stuff for you. I'm proficient in just about anything that needs to be done.
For more information, you can call them at 866-203-7475. You can also locate them at their website at beyond11.com. Let's take a closer look at that luthier position. The term luthier is derived from the French word luth, which means lute. The title is used interchangeably to anyone who works with stringed instruments including violins, harps, violas, and also guitars. Famous architects of the craft include Christian Frederick Martin, Orville Gibson, and Leo Fender. Each man has pioneered the field for guitars since the 20th century and are all credited for founding the companies that produce products that represent their names. You might have heard of them. The Guild of Luthiers, founded in 1972, has been the frontrunner of information for makers, repairers, and restorers. This is a worldwide organization dedicated to passing on the information to future generations. For more information on the Guild, you can check out their website at www.luth.org. Our final stop takes us to somewhat of a well-kept secret to many, but well known to the advanced guitar player and builder. Denny Rauen of Rauen Guitars has been in the business for nearly 40 years. He's a world-renowned luthier, and as you will see, he does pristine work on all forms of stringed instruments.
I left the manufacturing business a little over 30 years ago, so I've been in business now just over 30 years.
What he has here is not your normal guitar store, rather a workshop for masterpiece quality instruments.
This is a custom shop. There's probably not that many of shops like this. Pretty much just deal with customizing instruments for people, custom making instruments, repairing instruments, all the things that go into playing the instruments and making instruments do what they're supposed to do to the max, to the highest level.
I didn't really discover right away when I moved down here to Milwaukee. It was something I had to search for, and finding those type of music store gems is kind of a passion of any musician.
Denny's knowledge and skills led him to wonder, why aren't there shops that specifically build and work on instruments? Well, this curiosity led him to pioneer and conquer a much unknown market at the time, almost 40 years ago.
And so I decided that there was a need for a business like this. Though I didn't actually know of any, I sort of invented the idea myself and went after it.
After bouncing around the Chicago area for a few years, he finally found an excellent location in the River West neighborhood to open up shop, and now calls it home.
I decided this was the place. I knew some players up here, and I love Wisconsin and love the outdoors, and put the two together and said, hey, this is where I want to go, and I've been really happy about that choice ever since. And when you're doing something artistic, to be around so many artists, there's just a wealth of artists of all types in the River West area, and it's a fabulous area to live.
Like many young kids, he had an attraction to musical instruments, and better yet, he had a fixation on tearing them apart.
As a kid, I taught myself to play guitar, and actually started taking guitars apart as soon as I started playing them, so that both careers started together. That starts, I'm about 10 years old. I landed a job in a guitar factory in Illinois, and within the first year and a half, I was running the place and designing instruments. I moved to another company in Chicago called Dean Guitars, where I also was the production manager and designer, and continued that until I left to start my own business some 30-odd years ago. So the Dean Baby was one of the designs that I did that was fairly successful.
Upon asking him what his favorite instruments to work on are, the hesitation before he answered was sincere and pure.
I don't really have one. I've been doing this for a long time, and what I like doing is being challenged. And the beauty of this particular kind of work is we don't make just a certain guitar or a certain instrument. Everyone that comes in here has a specific need. They might have an old Les Paul or a Martin D28 or some instrument of that type, and want to do something to it specific that helps their style or helps them create a sound that nobody else has. And that's what's interesting.
Denny fits the true definition of a luthier. It would be hard to find another person in the area who is more qualified and has as much experience as he does. He works on guitars with the same delicate touch as an artist would on a canvas.
The job of being a luthier is probably the first most important thing is who's going to play the instrument. And if I am going to have specific people playing an instrument, I have to sit down with them and I have to talk to them. So I have to know how to be able to listen and really try to understand what it is that they need out of the instrument. You know, the skills that you need, woodworking, having a good ear, that's a given. You have to have that.
A lot of the stores in Milwaukee that I found down here have a lot of those really vintage, nice places where you can go in and, if you know what you're looking for, find a lot of things that would interest someone who knows the craft.
I've been doing this for a long time, and at a very high level, pretty much an expert at all aspects to instrument building. But the most important aspect would be the conversation that I have with the musician. That's very important. You're going to have a wonderful life if you do get into this kind of work, because it is wonderful work.
He understands the need and importance of continuing this tradition by passing on his knowledge and skills to the younger generation.
As I'm moving on in years, I do have some plans for what to do next and how to pass all this on, and hopefully, bring in a number of anxious and excited young luthiers who are interested in the field.
Like any skilled teacher, Denny does have an apprentice to pass on the tricks of the trade.
Oh, it's been great. He knows a ton, and he learned from other people and studied a bunch, and he's teaching me a lot of stuff that I don't have to take as much time to slowly learn. You know, he's showing me a couple tricks here and there, and he's allowing me the time to explore myself and figure out how I like to do things.
I'm working on a way to open up my shop to some of these people and rent space to them so that they can learn the craft here and have the space, have the tooling, and not only that, have me, you know, and to answer a lot of the questions they might have.
He's given me the opportunity, just having enough instruments around, to really get good at this quickly, to be able to excel pretty quickly, because there's just enough work here to learn on my own and learn tricks from him. Overall, setting up a guitar is interesting because you end up doing a number of different things, and it all correlates, so it's a long series of adjustments you're making. And so setting up a guitar in general is cool because it involves a lot of different things. It's kind of like surgery on an instrument, and you're really bringing it back to life, and you get to really work with the wood and make sure things are lining up the way they should.
Probably one of the more fulfilling parts of this job, when you get to go out to a concert and you've just completed an instrument for someone and they're performing with it, and it does exactly what they were hoping it would do, and later on you're talking about it after the show. That's really fulfilling to know that you hit the mark. It really is.
By having these skills, it's just inviting for guitar players to pick your brain.
I don't mind at all. People come up asking me questions. I really enjoy it. I love talking about it. I love the field. I love music, and I love guitar. So if I can help people, I love to.
Not every project is going to turn out the way you want it to, but when figuring out this trade, sometimes you're going to have to learn by failing.
It was emergency work. The violin player and myself realized the tail gut was in trouble, but I didn't have one on hand. I did what I could for the other aspects of the instrument. He hit 2 notes and it exploded. So the tailgate came off, the strings went flying, and I thought that was it. But obviously that was something that the player himself and I knew probably could happen, and did. And I survived it, but it was an awful, awful feeling. So sometimes things don't go right, but in the end it went very well.
Not everyone succeeds their whole life. It will humble you, and the right thing to do is continue on. Keep your head up and don't let a bad experience stray you off the path.
Just be interested in it and keep finding out as much as you can. Keep looking into it. And you can learn a lot from the people around you. Great teachers out there. There's a great community here. There's a great community in Milwaukee as far as music goes, and certainly guitar playing.
It's a wonderful life, and there's lots of ways to have a wonderful life where you don't make the big bucks.
For more information, you can call them at 414-265-4343 and also locate them at their website at denny@RauenGuitars.com.
There comes a time when Bet you might find it cheap, but you're never gonna find it free. Yeah.